Oh, yeah, man. It is Thirsty Thursday. Good morning, good people. Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. You know, it is Thirsty Thursday. We've got a game, of course, tonight. I'm not even sure who's playing, but it doesn't matter because it's football and it's week 10 in the NFL. That means 9 weeks of that 18-week season are gone. We're at the midway point of the season. Man, that sucks. That really sucks. But I'm going to make sure I enjoy each and every single game, every single week. And for our Cowboys, of course, they're back on the field about as healthy as they've been. We've heard some interesting things like the Dallas Cowboys are talking about practice, not the game that we love. We talk about practice now. We're talking about Tyron Smith possibly no longer practicing. You heard it correct. Tyron Smith may not be practicing anymore. They're looking at this and saying, we need to keep him on bubble wrap because the big guy staying healthy and playing in games and the way he played this past week without having any practice time, they look at it and say, he's been around long enough that all we need to do is say, block that guy. That's it. Just save it all for the game. That might not be the worst of the ideas. I personally think that maybe through the course of the next 3 weeks, you might want to rest him these 3 games. If we can't beat the New York Giants without Tyron Smith, we have no hopes whatsoever for the season. Hopefully the Cowboys, my buddy Greg kind of brought up something that was actually, it's really stuck in my head about the Texas toast. And we called it the Texas burnt toast offense. The first couple of weeks looked really, really bad, but you're starting to see Dak Prescott get into groove. The only problem, well, we've got several problems, but the major problem we're having right now with the Texas Coast offense is we're not running the ball very effectively. We're averaging 3.9 yards per run, which is pathetic. Something that the Dallas Cowboys have always been really good at is running the football, and we need that to step up. But a bright spot where we have so many negatives right now, we're trying to figure out what is going on with Michael Gallop. We just don't know. And Brandon Cooks, this is where it's kind of crazy. And this is one of those things that it kind of blew my mind away as I started looking at the numbers this morning. CeeDee Lamb. Remember a few weeks ago when CeeDee Lamb was kind of upset because he wasn't getting the ball? CeeDee Lamb has been on a tear recently. Right now, CeeDee Lamb has 824 yards. He's 5th in the NFL in receiving yards. And you think about some of those early games where he had less than 50. If we had really been working on getting him the ball, it would be amazing. He, right now, as we sit here today, is on pace for over 1,700 yards, which would be a Dallas Cowboys single-season record, beating Michael Irvin's 1,600 yards. 16, I can't remember exactly, but it's 1,600 yards. Record pace. And I don't see that slowing down, especially with the Cowboys having a 65.3% success rate. Actually, let me put up these numbers. Sorry, wrong camera. Here's where it gets to be crazy because this makes no sense whatsoever. CeeDee Lamb is averaging 14.5 yards per completion, which is great. You love to see that. He is your deep threat. But the thing that's mystifying me is, what are we doing with Brandon Cooks? Brandon Cooks, who has always been a deep threat, has got 17 catches for 165 yards. And 9.7 yards per reception. Clearly, we're just not using the capacity of him. And this is where, going back to Greg saying that what Mike McCarthy is doing is he's just implementing this offense bit by bit, giving you something to think that, okay, first couple of weeks, this is what the Cowboys are, and then changing it up to being something else. So what we're looking at now may be totally different by the end of the year. We saw the first game where they were really trying to use the tight ends, where tight ends drop passes left and right. We've seen, like against the Chargers, where they were really trying to feature Michael Gallop, where they targeted him, I think, 10 or 11 times, and unfortunately only came down with 3 passes. Had that wide open shot right there in the end zone that would have been a huge play. Now you're seeing him begin to feature CeeDee Lamb. Maybe the next iteration of this is to start featuring Brandon Cooks, because you kind of lull him over to sleep to say, okay, this is the guy we got to stop. Because in the last 3 weeks, what you've actually seen is something that's actually blowing my mind away right now. And that is Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson, this is where it's kind of crazy. I don't know if you guys realize this, but Jake Ferguson is our second leading receiver on the team. Michael Gallup's got 243 catches, 38 targets, coming down the ball 22 times. Jake Ferguson has had 43, 5 more targets, but has come down with the ball 10 more times. His completion percentage, success rate, is 60.5. And it's 10.3 yards he's averaging per catch. Now, this is a little thing that kind of, like I said, blew me away. He's averaging a half yard more than Brandon Cooks, which is kind of weird because Brandon Cooks is a speedster. That's your tight end. What's even crazier, if we take the last 3 games, he's averaged 13 yards, 11.8, and 15 yards per reception. He's averaging 13 yards per reception. He's becoming actually a bigger threat than most people realize. And it's amazing that he's a bigger threat than Brandon Cooks or Michael Gallup. The other interesting part in here is where we need to start looking at this is the case for playing Jalen Tolbert more. I love Michael Gallup. I root for Michael Gallup. I hated Michael Gallup having the ACL injury. But the Cowboys made a mistake. If you go back through Michael Gallup's rookie year, the first half of the season wasn't really good. He ended up playing much better going down the stretch. His second year was a monster year. But after that second year, continually, even before the ACL injury, his numbers were going down less and less and less. And we're at the point where now the case is you really need to be playing Jalen Tolbert more. Jalen Tolbert on 15 targets has come down the ball 10 times, has 120 yards, half of what Michael Gallup has, in less than half of the targets. And he's averaging 12 yards per reception. He's got a TD, which Michael Gallup doesn't. And his success rate, this is where it's really crazy and it's mind-blowing, is Michael Gallup, his success rate is a 47.4. The highest, believe it or not, on this team success rate is Jalen Tolbert. When Jalen Tolbert has been on the field, he has had the highest success rate, 66.7. That's higher than CeeDee Lamb. And averaging 12 yards of reception, hey, you need to get this guy to get about 50 receptions on the season. That's no joke. And the case needs to be made that they need to start really using him. Higher numbers and success than Brandon Cooks. So you're beginning to see the weapons that are maturating for the Cowboys here. And this is where creatively, maybe we'll see Mike McCarthy start to use these weapons in different ways. Our offense has truly been stepping up and doing more and more than they did early on. Unfortunately, our defense against the Eagles had kind of stepped back along with our special teams. If the Dallas Cowboys could ever put together a complete game like they did with the Rams against big teams, we'll get a different result. And that's a fact. So going to get up this morning, and we're doing some changes here in the studio as I'm able to plug in a little bit more. We've got, we're open for business here with our Cowboys lamp. We got Joe Boo here in the house, and we're about to do some work This space is really going to change. It looks like pardon my dust, because it is pardon my dust, because the place is kind of dusty from all the work. But we may be starting to sand out the floors here maybe this evening to get this together, to get these floors finished, which would be fantastic. But as we get through and get going on these things here, we're doing different things with the set here as I'm able to start getting things working differently. So we won't be going to the TV. We're going to be going to the set.
TVs. That's what we got.
Look, the Eagles get the win, and then that's where it all stands. We've loved San Francisco. Seattle has been up and down. Detroit also got worked when they went to Baltimore earlier this season.
Mm-hmm.
Are the Cowboys, in your mind, the biggest threat to the Eagles in the NFC?
Yeah, I think if you look at how they played over, let's just say the past 3 weeks, yeah, there's no question. They have the firepower to be able to match this football team on any given Sunday and go ahead and be the representative for the NFC in the Super Bowl. I wholeheartedly believe that. I think one of the keys for this team, look, we talk about Dak, and I understand it. Especially I understand it coming off of last year, how he played in the playoffs. But if you look at this game against Philadelphia, I understand Terrence Steele, you're going to have to figure out what they're going to do as far as helping him in pass protection, especially late in games when teams try to close it out. But look at the rest of this offensive line and look how they're playing. Have you seen how Tyron Smith is playing right now?
Yeah.
Did you see what Tyron Smith was doing to their pass rushers against Philadelphia?
Yes.
He was shutting them down. If this offensive line can stay intact, guys like Jalen Tolbert, who you see on your screen, can continue to gain Dak's trust. So he has someone else to go to other than CD. They can keep moving CD around. Tony Pollard stays healthy. Micah and the defense are going to be there. They're playing championship caliber defense. Dallas is fine. Dallas is fine right now. They just need to keep developing on what they have started to build over the past 2 years.
Can I ask you a question on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Saturday? Because he and I had this going last week in particular. The one thing the Cowboys do not have is the ability to play smash mouth offense, and that frustrates us. And it felt like there was an opportunity there. Derrick Henry might have been out there for the taking. As someone who knows team building and is going to be a general manager someday, like, they won't do it. Teams just won't do it. They value these draft picks so much. Tell me how it made sense that the Cowboys do not have a power running back.
No, I saw some of the discussion about that. And if you remember, going back to before the season started, I said, look, Dallas is one of those teams. Remember when Dalvin Cook was on the market, before he went to the Jets, I said Dalvin Cook and Tony Pollard together, although they're kind of similar in terms of being that one-cut zone running, slashing style back, that would be better than just having one of them.
That's right.
Have two of them. So I definitely agree. Look, Derrick Henry is the ultimate,
but we can't get Derrick Henry now.
To what Tony Pollard brings. So if you can get him, I mean, of course, then all of a sudden now they're like right neck and neck with Philly, no question.
Yeah. But to Lewis's point, if you could get him, the Cowboys didn't even make the call. Not saying the Titans would have given Derrick Henry to anyone.
Right.
But Dallas didn't even pick up the phone to ask.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah,
and that is the problem when you look at them, because what is different about this offense? What's different about the roster? There isn't, when I look at it, they have the talent, but there isn't that next thing that makes you say, okay, now they have upgraded and there's no doubt.
It's about to be a party in here. BetMGM's got all the sports betting.
They built something that it feels like there are no major holes. You see what the 49ers did last year. They went and got Christian McCaffrey. You see what the Cowboys did a few years back when they went and got Amari Cooper. I do kind of feel like I'm never one who advocates for like the splashy move, but the Cowboys could have used something. It feels like they need a little something to add to this.
Here's the difference when you think about Philadelphia's run game is they have a quarterback that they're willing to run. Dak is not that guy. So
he's running more.
A two-back system that will ultimately help. And for situations like the closeout, they're bad in the red zone. They're like 29. They were first last year, right? So why does that matter? Because when you're in the red zone, you got to bring your own blockers. Guy like Derrick Henry can go run through tackles. It makes a difference. It helps guys like Terrence Steele, who gave up 12 pressures, I think, against the Eagles alone. Because now all of a sudden you can tee off on guys. It's not I have to be in a back pedal all day. There has to be something that you can go to and lean on if you're Mike McCarthy. Physicality, I thought, was going to be the answer. Now they're going to have to figure out different ways to do it.
A coach put it to us this way. As a matter of fact, it was Jimbo Fisher. I was down at Texas A&M talking to him about, and he said, look, college football has become more and more competitive, especially now with the transfer portal, how you can improve your team from one year to next just like that. He called it finding the inches, that it's even more important now because of how it's almost a little bit like the NFL in terms of how teams can, like, you can improve your football team at the drop of a hat with one guy. Dallas, I think you always have to be willing to go ahead and try and find that extra inch that will put you just a notch above your competitor. Philly has shown we'll make whatever move we need to make sure that we're staying a step ahead. San Francisco did it, now with acquiring more pass rush, with Chase Young. Dallas, don't just sit there now.
Yeah.
You're good, but don't just sit there.
It's too late for that. The trade deadline's
and
gone.
The ultimate irony, they spent all summer talking about how they didn't want to put it all on Dak. It's more on Dak than ever, right? I mean, they can't run the ball. If he doesn't play great, they have no chance.
Yeah, that was when Jerry said, he was like, if Dak plays like this.
Right.
Well, let me tell you something. When you go play defenses 3-4 weeks in a row in the playoffs, which you're going to have to, that's fatiguing for a quarterback as well. Why does listen, go look at the Chiefs in the playoffs. Go look and see if they run the ball more. Guess what? They do. Why? Because as good as Mahomes is, they got to take some pressure off at some point.
They're 100% right on that. You got to take some of the pressure off. And, of course, as we sit here, we have no running game. The amazing thing is we're always told that, Dak Prescott needs those guys. And you remember that famous time? Dak Prescott, he needs those guys. Well, the reality is we don't have that guy. It used to be, it's all Zeke Elliott. Well, Zeke hasn't been Zeke for forever, and he's gone. It was Amari Cooper made Dak Prescott. Well, Amari Cooper's gone. And, we're now trying to get the next guys up and running. So we'll see what we see. And as always, we'll be watching. It looks like a snooze fest. I believe it is, what game is tonight? Panthers and Bears. So we can at least scout the Panthers. And that's basically the #1 pick bowl. I'm Mark Holmes, and as always, I appreciate you guys. Peace.